to A Well-Designed Business. My name is Luann Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company Window Works from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. Today, Beth Smith joins me. Beth is the owner and principal designer of Beth Diana Smith Interior Design, which just so happens to be a New Jersey-based interior design firm. Beth's work and her design advice have been featured on television and various print and online publications, which include NBC, HGTV, Vogue.com, Ebony, Design Sponge, and the New York Times. But interior design came years after pursuing degrees in business and accounting, okay? Beth has a love for process and business strategy. After completing her M.B.A, she spent more than a decade in corporate finance in companies such as Johnson Johnson and Viacom, where she honed her skills in understanding clients, analytics, budgeting, and developed a keen attention to detail. And my friends, this is all in Beth's bio, out there for her clients to see, okay? Because we've learned from Fred Burns, from Erica Ward, and so many others over the last 3.5 years, that your superpower is something that we want to put up in front, right up there, so that our potential client can see it. We want to convey what it is, right? We've said it dozens of times. If your background is in finance, in budgeting of any kind, from any field, that this is a powerful skill, and it is extremely valuable to leverage this when meeting your potential clients. When you tell the world that you have handled budgets for big and small companies, for potential clients that are afraid that a designer is going to go run amok with their money, instead, doesn't it convey that this designer that they're reading about understands how to manage money? Okay. And for some clients, this might make them more inclined to choose that particular designer that's leading with that information. Okay. So, and the point is don't be sitting out there thinking, well, I don't have a finance background. The point is, what is your background, right? That's what I'm saying, because you might attract a different type of client who is a whiz at budgets and doesn't need you or to feel the comfort. Every client needs you to manage the budget, but not have that as an angst or something that they're concerned about, right? But you might, and your superpower might talk to something else. So the point is to lean into it, okay? Now, on the show today, Beth and I do talk about budgets. We talk about managing situations and expectations. We talk about sexual harassment and why she now has a clause in her contract about it. We talk about the power and the huge benefit of our businesses and our self-development to attend industry events. We are on a little windy road in our conversation, but I do think we hit some good points on several topics. I hope you agree. And before I introduce you to Beth, I want to let you know I have an announcement that I'm repeating my Power Talk Friday tour this year in Las Vegas. Okay, if you're new to the show and you're not sure what this is like a mini Luann live event that we just had last year, last March. Okay, this is a one-day coaching event. It will be held on Saturday, July 27th. Las Vegas market opens Sunday, July 28th. Okay. We will run from 8 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock at night. Yes, I know I'm insane and I love to pull you guys right down that little road of insanity with me. Okay. It includes hot breakfast, hot lunch, a dinner at the Venetian Hotel or somewhere similar. Okay. Last year it was at the Venetian at the Palazzo, right? And it also includes discussions with my Power Talk Friday experts. So we spend the morning having basically a facilitated discussion with me and the expert. And then the afternoon, we do tiny, tiny round tables, okay? And the thing about it is, when I say tiny, tiny, this event is open to a maximum of 15 interior designers. Okay, no more than that, because this is really, really nitty gritty, hands-on coaching with you and really helping you have a breakthrough in your business. And having done this 2 times already on a small scale like this, I absolutely promise you it is a transformational day. 100% promise. Okay. Now, I decided to do this today. Okay. And Nicole Heimer, who is my guru of all things website, and Christy, who is my guru of all things creating content, they don't even know it yet. And so it's probably not going to be on the website by the time this show goes live. However, if you are on my email list, you will get an email announcement about it with all the details. So to be on my email list, text the word Design Biz, B-I-Z, Design Biz, no capitals, no spaces, to the number 444999. All right. So I will eventually have it on the website, probably 3 or 4 days after the show goes live, and you'll be able to see the information. But I didn't want to wait to tell you. So it's 6 weeks away, and we're going to Vegas, and let's go and let's get something done in your business. All right. Now, I also want to say that many of you have already signed up for Sales for Creatives, the course that I'm doing virtually through Zoom. Okay. And I want you to understand that these are 2 very completely different opportunities for your business growth. They are not overlapping. So if Sales for Creatives is not for you, don't assume that the Power Talk Friday tour is not for you. 100% different. In fact, I just had a conversation with a designer today in a one-on-one coaching session, and there's no doubt in my mind the Sales for Creative course is not valuable for that designer. Not now, not where that designer is in her business. And so I said, no, don't give me your money for that. I will not take it. You can't do it. However, the Las Vegas Power Talk Friday tour is something that could be valuable. So the thing is, I'm happy to have that conversation with you. If you're not sure, then email me. You can find my email on my website. Email me and say, I'm on the fence. I'm not sure if either one of these are right for me. Can we talk it over? And leave me your telephone number, and I'm going to call you. And here's the thing. I don't want anybody doing anything with me that I don't think is valuable for your business. Because when I hear what you need, if I think what you need is Michelle Williams, I'm going to tell you. If I think what you need is Nancy Ganscalver, I'm going to tell you. If I think what you need is Eileen Hahn, I'm going to tell you. But if I think I can help you, I'm going to tell you that too. Okay? All right. So over to the website, luannigara.com, find everything you need. All righty. I want to introduce you to Beth. She is just awesome. Hi, Beth. Thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Hi, Luann. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm happy about this. It's fun for me when I interview designers that I know. So I'm so used to seeing your pretty face in and out of Window Works, working on projects with Kimberly and at our Lunch and Learns. And we've a couple of times tried to get this interview done, and now we're doing it, right?
Yes.
So, and what's fun for me too, Beth, is, and this happened also when I interviewed Jenny and Greg Madden. I have been doing Jenny and Greg's window treatments for several years now. And when I was about to interview them, I do what I always do. Now I go and I really read your website, and I do whatever research else I can find on you on the web. And was fun to learn things about Jenny and Greg that I didn't know. And the same thing happened for me with you. I was like, geez, okay. She's just not cute and pretty over there. She's a smart cookie.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Of course, I knew you were smart, but I guess I always put a little bit more reverence on somebody that's got that finance smart, because that is not in my brain at all. I'm just like, you could count?
Yes, I can.
In your head and everything? Yeah, so here I am. I'm reading your website. M.B.A, worked in corporate finance for a decade. I'm like, whoa, okay.
Oh, yes. Heavy corporate girl.
That's it. That's it. But so that what happens is, first of all, what happens is it starts to say a lot of things to me. It starts to say to me that you're probably had less of a curve in locking down the business side of your firm than many of us experience when we start out. And also, I love that you speak to it on your website because, of course, that's what Fred Burns tells us to do all the time. Tell everybody about what it is that makes you unique. And sometimes it is your previous background. And of course, if we remember Erica Ward, oh my goodness, I want to say it was episode 6 or 9. She came on the show right at the beginning of the podcast, and she said, you have transferable skills from your career that you are bringing to your interior design career, and make sure you lean into them, you use them, but then also you express them to your potential clients, right?
Oh my gosh, you hit the nail on the head. That is so true. I use my corporate background, especially budgeting and how to move things around so heavily in my business.
Right. So you're talking about like if somebody has an XYZ budget and they want this sofa and they're not going to give up on it, but that's kind of crunching everything and making it a little difficult. You're moving the pieces of the room, the parts around to make the whole thing fit. You're not just going to say, we really have to go over budget.
It could be one or the other. Like if there's an, I always try to tell a client that we really should be focusing on the items you love. Let's not get things that you think are so-so just because it's not in your budget. If anything, we can just do things in phases. Whether it be, let's just split up the rooms. We'll do your living room now. We'll do your bedroom later. So I will, I'll give you kind of two spins off of that. First, we could say, all right, well, I'm going to just use super easy numbers. If your budget for your living room is $50,000, but that sofa is 30,000, then first of all, I'm going to have a very honest conversation with you. Like, honey, that doesn't make sense. And let me tell you why. Because we're going to need other seating. We're going to need tables because 9 times out of 10, your client doesn't really think about how things add up. You need art. If the goal is to have a truly completed space, that's going to rack up. And then I'll give them other options that we can do. But once you show people the other options, saying here's what you can get at 20,000, here's what you get at 30, and here's what you get at 50, once you visually show them the difference, they're going for the 50. But that's something also I learned in finance because I did a lot. At my last corporate role at Viacom, I did a lot of presentations to a lot of different audiences, not only talking to other finance people, but to just business partners who sometimes finance wasn't really their thing. So I had to figure out, how am I going to explain this to someone who hates finance and it makes them uneasy? So I kind of try to do it in the same type of way based on the client's personality.
So I love that, number one. And so what you're saying is, when you said you're going to show somebody a 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, they're always going to take the 50,000. Is that how do you maneuver? Like, so if they said they had a $20,000 budget, but you show them the pictures for good, better, best, and they like best, what do you do then? How do you work that around? You say, well, you picked the 50, but you told me you had 20.
The reality is no one's ever going to tell you everything that they got. And that was a hard lesson that I had to learn as well. Because if they really want it, they're going to come up with the money. The other thing is, if I see a client that is starting to like stretch themselves out, I will also halt them. Just out of the sense of being ethical. Like if I see that, you're saying that you can't afford groceries for the month, and this isn't what we should be doing. Then
Right.
we have to pause.
Okay.
But normally those things really, I decide on how I'm going to approach it depending on where we are in the process. If we first meet, and this is the consultation, and they're telling me that they only have $20,000, but what they're talking about that they want to do sounds more like it's going to cost 50, I'll tell them that, like, well, that's not the budget that can afford that. But if we are in the presentation phase, which means that they've already signed the contract, they've already paid the design fee deposit based on this predetermined project scope that we agreed upon in their consultation, and I see that there's a lot of area for opportunity. If they invest a little bit more, then I will include that in their presentation without having to be asked, because I want them to show, I always want to show them how they could be living.
Well, I love that because that's one of the things that I teach in the sales courses that I teach for window treatment professionals is don't save somebody's money, right? And what I
Yeah.
mean by that is definitely save somebody's money when you can do this or that and the same quality, same value, everything. But when you're presenting and you're giving your expert opinion is to what you just said. Present everything that's possible. Don't push it, don't buy it, but they're expecting you as the professional to open their eyes. They can say, that's awesome, thanks, no thanks, but you don't, to your point, right? If somebody says I have a $20,000 budget, it's funny here because I'm going to fight with my own self on this. On one hand, a professional is going to respect that budget and not make somebody feel less than for not doing more. But on the other hand, it is our job as professionals to say, think about it this way. This is a room for 15 years. Do you want to do it in stages and have it look like this? Like how, tell me where you fall in on that, because I could stand here and make an argument for both sides.
So one of the questions that I always ask in their client questionnaire is, are you planning on aging in place? So
Okay.
this is your forever home,
Right.
then, and the budget is not as big as you want it to be right now, then let's phase it out, but we're going to do it strategically. So in the long term, you're not spending as much as if we piecemeal it just to make things happen quickly, because that just doesn't make sense.
Okay.
But if they aren't planning on aging in place and they're only planning on being there for 3 years, I'm like, well, let's
Right.
not do this. Then
Let's not
maybe
put a
it's
$15,000-$20,000 bookcase in when your budget is 40,000, right?
absolutely
Right.
like then we shouldn't do a ton of custom based on what's going to fit in certain areas. Maybe we customize things that we know that you'll love so much that you can bring it to the next place.
Okay. So let's go back to the actual question of budget. So your questionnaire, your pre-consult questionnaire, like many, many designers pre-consult questionnaire, asks the question, estimated budget, question mark. And what do you find happens? What do you find that happens? Do you find that people answer it and they answer it truthfully most of the time? They answer it unrealistically. They thought they were being truthful, they were unrealistic. Or do you find that people are mostly thinking, well, I want to spend 50, so I'll say I've got 30? Like, what are you finding in your experience, Beth, once you receive this questionnaire and then have the conversation before the consult about the questionnaire?
It's either that they are guessing, thinking that, oh, I think it's going to cost this much, and are really not even thinking about how much money that they have. Or you have the client who says, well, I only got about, I only have 20,000 and that's all I have.
Mm.
And they're being really honest. And then some people they literally have no idea. They have no idea how much it's going to cost. They're just throwing down a number, but they'll tell me that when we actually talk.
Okay. So for the purposes of the form, because it's a required entry, they'll put anything, whether it's $1 or 100,000, but they'll say to you right away, I just put that number and it's not real.
Yes, absolutely. Because there have been clients who have put, they want a kitchen renovated, but they only have 4,000. I mean,
You want
unless
new
it's
knobs, you mean?
Barbie's dream house and it's teeny tiny,
Right.
then that's the only way we're going to be able to do a kitchen renovation for 4,000. So that easily helps me um kind of weed out and not give the client unrealistic expectations and let them know, hey, there's absolutely no way we're going to be able to do the things that you want for that budget. However, if you do want these things to be done, you'll need this. So if that's something you're interested in, then let's touch base in 6 months, 9 months, whenever you think that you will have that money set aside, and then we'll take it from there.
Right, right. I mean, I guess it is entirely possible for someone to be that unaware of what something could cost. To think, I mean, 4,000 for a kitchen renovation is actually 4,000 for a kitchen refresh. I mean,
Yes.
paint, accessories, and knobs. That's what 4,000 is, right?
Yeah, that could easily be your refrigerator and the dishwasher.
Right,
And that's
right.
all we got. Yeah.
Right, right. And so there are clients that really are unaware. And so in that regard, so your tactic is to explain, okay, so if they're saying kitchen renovation, you're clarifying. Does that mean new appliances? Does that mean new cabinetry? Does that mean new floor? Does it mean new paint? What does it mean to them? And then once you distill what it means, you'll say, honestly, this is more this price point. And then it's, do you want to take the next step, or do you want to regroup and call me when you have the funds? Is that the way you handle it?
Yes, for the most part, and for I'm literally going off of gut instinct, off of how I choose my approach. Example, I had a client last year. When we had the consultation, he said that his budget was 25,000, but we talked about doing his living room, his dining room, his bedroom, his loft office, a guest bedroom. Um,
Wow.
and we're talking about all new furniture.
Wow.
So he owned this home for, I want to say, at least a decade at this point. He was a bachelor. Even his headboard on his master bed was literally half on the floor. Like everything was going to be replaced.
My
And I
goodness.
said, there's no way we're going to be able to do this. And then I explained to him why. And I said, on top of that, your house needs to be repainted. And he said, I had the house painted a year ago, but he didn't sample the paint. He chose a color. He went to work. He came back, and most of his house was this beige, and not a good beige.
you,
Beige.
you like, first time I ever heard beige sound like a dirty word. Beige.
Yes, it was a sad
Sad,
beige.
not
Yeah.
happy.
And I'm like, because his house was 2 floors, but you walk in, there's the foyer, then there's the first stairwell, then the second stairwell, and then there were hallways. So I'm like, we have a lot to repaint. I can't in good conscience, you know, not want to include painting in the budget. So if you're saying that you spent $10,000 on this last year, I'm telling you it's going to be worth the investment to repaint now. Now, it didn't cost that much this go around because we didn't have to repaint the
Moldings
ceiling.
and ceilings and stuff,
Yeah,
right?
so luckily that was done. It was like we just have to focus on the walls, and we're probably going to do some touch-ups where we remove all these light fixtures.
Mhm.
So based on our conversations, I was like, here's what I can do. I'm going to present to you what I believe your budget should be based on the design. And then at the presentation, we can walk you through it. So I think everything came to, at presentation, I think it was about 80
Mm.
or 75, something about that.
Mhm.
And he was like, all right,
Okay.
I don't want to go that high. So we landed at like 66.
Okay. But a heck of a lot higher than 25.
Yeah, and even during the process, we ended up closer to, I want to say, the mid 70s,
Mhm.
because as the client starts to see things coming together,
Mm.
it's like, oh, you know what, I do want to do that. So we ended up, we didn't want to fully renovate the kitchen, but it was part of the initial budget. I was like, I can't in good conscience not tell you that we should rip down all your upper cabinets and
Mm.
replace them with cabinets, and here's why we should do that.
Right.
So those types of things ended up getting added during the process.
Right. And I think that's a great way to further clarify what I was saying in the beginning is don't save your clients money, because
Yeah.
at face value, it sounds like waste your clients money. And that's not what I mean. What I mean is exactly that. Once you go from 25,000 desired budget to agreement on $75,000 budget or 67,000, whatever the heck it was that you agree on in the process. That's what I mean. It's like, don't have somebody spend $60,000 and another $5,000 to take these cabinets down and really do the kitchen right. Needs to be presented to them. They don't have to say yes, but I don't want to spend $60,000 when 65 would have made it awesome. And I won't know that until you've left and my first friend walks in and says, why didn't she change your upper cabinets? They're so 1990. Right? Right?
Yes,
And so
yes.
that's the thing. So it's not to don't save your client's money is not a phrase that means to run ramshot and disrespect. It means that you're the professional. And so there's a couple of keys in here and that are the learning points here, Beth, that you're sharing is that number one is often people will have more available funds than they express that they have. And it's sometimes because they're hiding it from you and they're wary that you're going to just run ramshot and spend it all. But sometimes it is that they're just unrealistic. Okay. But the thing is, the tactic is that you're expressing is to take it in, to make sense of it for yourself, and to find out what they actually want to accomplish, and then say to them what you said. This is not possible on the 25,000, but let me put together a proposal that reflects what you actually expressed you wanted and tell you what it costs, and we'll take it from there, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, are there, so that's a situation. And you did say this, you understand it from a gut level intuition. You're taking it case by case basis because as human beings, we're gathering information from that very first intake call about this potential client's style, personality, buying personality, all of those things. So you're taking cues from that. You're taking cues from the consultation, and you're ultimately thinking, this is worth my time to put together a proposal that I know is going to be over twice out of his budget. But I have made a decision that there's a possibility. This door is open here, right? This door is open. So, but there's other times where the door is not open, that the person is very clear, very finite. And so there's two things that can happen in that situation. You can walk away, or you can start to negotiate, or you can start to push back. How do you handle that? If he had said, look, 25 is it, and you would say in good conscience, you need a $7,000 paint job and you're not going to get much further. So if he hardlined you, do you just say, I don't think this is a project for me? Or how do you handle that, Beth? Any ideas there?
I would try to pivot and I would say, let's take I'll use your same example. Let's take the 7,000 for the painting, which you're pretty close because it came to 6,950. So I'm impressed.
Very close.
Yeah. um, and I was like, so I would have said, so let's focus on that. And I'll give you the general idea of what each room should be so we can get the color palettes down for each room in order for us to get the painting done. And then based on where you spend most of your time, let's do that room first. So he spent a lot of time in, for instance, his bedroom. So I would have easily just said, well, let's just spend the rest of the money trying to redo your bedroom.
Okay. And I'll make an assumption that if he said, look, I just paid 10,000 for paint last year, make the place look pretty on 25 and forget the paint. Would you, because you can picture this exact home. So this is not theory. Would you have had to say, look, that's like putting, makeup on a pig. It's not going to work and you're not going to be satisfied? Or would you be like, okay, your money, your dollar, let's do it? How does that work?
I would have said then let's only do foundational pieces. So just the painting, swap out your light fixtures, upgrade your appliances.
Okay, so you were all about that paint. That paint was making the difference in that home.
Oh my God, yeah. That when painting happened, I think it was like a 4 or 5 day job. On day 2, it felt like a whole new home.
Oh, and he probably felt it as well.
He did, because one of the things that we were also doing, I said he had this fireplace in his living room that was about 17 feet high. So I would have also said, let's, redo your fireplace, as we've discussed, plus the paint. So just off of that, it was like a whole new property. So it was
Mm,
worth the absolute investment. So I would have pushed for those things. Like, because he also said, oh, I only want to be here for maybe another 10 years.
mm.
Which we all know 10 years is going to fly by. That
Oh,
could be
yeah.
another 15.
Right.
So I said, well, let's then do a mix of the things that will feel better in the space and that will really have an amazing resale value. So at least you can try to make your money back on the back end.
Okay. So I think the lesson in here is that as the professional, you really knew how critical the paint component was. And in other situations, it might be that you're just looking and speaking with somebody about a kitchen design, and the critical thing you might really know as a professional is that the stove is in the wrong spot. Like, bite the bullet and move it. So the point is that that's where your expertise is coming in, because I'm pushing you back. I don't know if he did, but you were not going to give up that paint job. That was just
I love that.
non-negotiable. And then of course the result was that it had the exact effect that you knew already that it would have. And that's where we trust you to lead us. And so I think that's important. And again, it's to your point, there's a nuance of a lesson there. That doesn't mean the next job that somebody has out there that they really think paint is critical, that it's going to go exactly this way. But I think it is that huge listening to your gut and knowing that the best result for the client is going to come, you possibly know where it's going to come from, and you might have to fight to make that understood. Or fight is a really harsh word. You might need to just really, like you have said multiple times, and this is why I believe this, and this is why. And that's where you get somebody, when you can stand there and explain why, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I do try to explain to my client, I think this would be great because of this. And it also has to be that relationship where the client trusts you to know that you're just not, throwing their money down the drain. It's like,
Right.
this is a strategy. So let's strategically do this together. So I'm going to try to have you, drop into my brain so you can see what I see. But not every client is able to do that. I just knew based on our conversations that he could, that
Right.
he would trust the process.
Right, right, right. That is that part of really being a good listener from the very first conversation, and also asking questions so that you have things to listen to.
Yes, absolutely. Because I've had another client who I said, I don't think we could do anything in here. They had just bought this property. It was an older home. The person who lived there before had been there for a long time. The colors were really rough on the eye. So when you walked into their, as soon as you walked into their home, it did not feel good. It was really dark. It just felt strange. And I said, what, no matter what we do, it's going to compete with this paint
Right.
because you don't want to paint. So I said we could do this, but I wouldn't feel comfortable taking on this job if the finishes on the walls I couldn't change.
And what did they say?
We ended up not proceeding because I couldn't do it.
Right, 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 right.
Yeah.
Like it's like I said, you can pile the makeup on all day long, but if the stuff underneath isn't good, and the thing is, that's where it does take some courage to walk away from a project like that, but you have to take yourself to the end of the project, right, Beth? So if you
Yeah.
had been, agreeable to do it, knowing in your gut the whole time the end result wasn't going to be fabulous, now somebody is paid for your services and it doesn't look fabulous. And for you at the end as a designer to say, well, I told you unless you painted, that's not going to matter to them at that point. You took the money, you did the project, I hired you, you're quote unquote the professional, and yes, I fully thought you were lying, that this could be fabulous even without the paint. I did not believe
Yeah.
you. And I don't care that you told it to me.
Yeah,
Right?
that's exactly what it boils down to. And in certain situations where a client didn't want to do something that I deemed important, I always outline that in writing.
Yes. Right. I have a thing. It doesn't happen so much in window treatments, but every once in a while, somebody will really, really insist on something. And then in my last and final attempt to get them to stop making that bad decision is I will say, all right, because you know me, I've got the personality that's a little bit like flip, right? So a different way you would have to say it if you were more serious. I'll be like, all right, all right, all right, you win. It doesn't matter that I've been doing this for almost 4 decades. Your idea is the right one. And when we install it, I'm going to have Billy bring a sign that says, Luann did not suggest this window treatment.
That is
And
so
that usually stops them in their tracks a little bit, right? And the thing is, my reason that I do that in a funny way and so dramatic like that is because you do still look. I'm not doing a full room, so there are times where someone will be like, "Excuse me, I called you to get this window treatment. Would you just do this for me?" And I'm like, "All right,
yeah.
fine." Right? But the thing is, what happens is when that is done, like most people, when we get to that point, if I say that, they're going to be like, all right, all right, all right, all right, all right, I won't do it. What should I do? Right? And I'll be like, I don't know, the thing I told you 5 minutes ago to do, right? But the thing is, if somebody does plow through that suggestion of mine where I've made it from a professional level and then I've made it as a joke like that, when it doesn't look right, there's no way they can stand there and say, you didn't tell me.
Yeah.
It was so memorable. I'm like, really? I was bringing in an etched in gold plaque that said Luann thought this was a crappy idea. So, but the point is, to your point, is that when someone is not going along with your advice, and what you said is you make sure to consistently remind and say, hey, we're doing this, although I suggested this. We're doing this because you want that, but you recall that I preferred that you did this. That's what you say you do, right?
Absolutely. I will always put it in an email, normally kind of along the lines of like, hey, Kate, prior discussion today, I know that you feel very strongly about doing this, this, and this. I just wanted to outline to you in writing that my recommendation was X, Y, and Z. However, since you wanted to proceed, we'll go ahead and do that. If you have any questions or concerns, please let me know. Other than that, I'll follow up as to get whatever
Right,
done.
right. It's your nice professional way of saying the same thing.
Yep.
I told you this is a dumb idea. Right,
Yep.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
because
and
people get forgetful really quickly. Like,
oh,
oh, I didn't know. I was like, that's funny because the email that I sent you on July 26th at 9:36 a.m.
you did
said
kind of
that.
know. But that's the truth. You do have to do that because you're being hired as a professional, and it doesn't mean, that at every level with every client, they're going to do what they've hired us to do. Sometimes they're their own worst enemy. It's true, right? And so, but there is a way, whether it's your very proper way, which is probably the way I should do it, or my crazy pants way of doing it, one way or another, we get it done. And that's what's
Yep.
important, and it's memorable. So that there's no going back on it. And that shouldn't, here's the thing too, right? Do you agree with this? That should not, if that's happening often through the process of a particular client. So if somebody's listening, Beth, and they're like, my goodness, that's this client with every decision, that's a different problem, right? That's either it's a wrong fit client or they haven't established themselves as the alpha authority, the leader of the design. Like, what do you say about that?
Oh my God, that's a good question. It heavily depends on the specific circumstance. And I say that because, I've had clients that literally made me want to yank my hair out. And Luann, I have very little hair. So,
I'm gonna get a tweezers and pull it out. That's
right?
how painful you make.
Literally, root by root. Um, and I've been very careful to say some things I will just let slide off my back.
Hmm.
But I realize when you give people too much room,
Right.
they're going to keep on asking for more. So I've had to send emails that literally say, I understand this, this, and this. I'll take accountability for this. However, per the contract and the welcome letter that you received, these are the expectations. So I can't continue to do this. However, I'm more than willing to help you get this, this, and this done.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm definitely not going back and forth with the client. And this is, at the end of the day, we're running a business. You're not
Right.
going to go to Target and try to pull the same crap you're trying to pull with me.
Great point,
Yeah.
right? Right?
Yeah.
You know, just because we don't have a big, you know, red Target icon on us, we're still businesses, right?
Oh, absolutely. So I take my contract very seriously, and I will always try to highlight very key points in the welcome letter that I send after the contract has been signed and after I receive their design fee deposit.
Okay, so let's go there. So you are signing the contract in person with them and you're going over it and you're highlighting the key points that in your experience have been like the stickler points that people pretend to not notice or actually don't notice or whatever it is. But then you, after that, you send a welcome letter and you reiterate the things that you know have been the troublemaking spots during a design process.
So I never sit down with the client now to go over their contract.
Oh,
My contract is probably about 4 to 5 pages,
right.
and I have it outlined in sections like here's photography, here's your design fee, here's regarding merchandise. And I will send it to them digitally and give them time to review. And I'll say, please read this thoroughly, come back to me with any questions. And normally I would try to bold or highlight any important points in the body of the communication that they're going to receive the contract in. And then if they have any questions, we'll go back and forth. They'll sign their contract. Once they sign the contract, and once I have confirmation through my system that they've paid the design fee deposit, then I'll let them know you're going to receive your welcome letter in 48 to 72 hours. And in that welcome letter, I will outline here's the next steps for what you can expect. Here's a page of frequently asked questions. And here's some things that we discussed. And, please note the followings. But in the FAQs is where I highlight those key points from the contract that I feel like for that client, they would want to know. Even things like my business hours are in there.
Right.
And I had to include business hours because clients, oh my God, I had a client who one day text messaged me at 3:07 in the morning.
And wait, and tell me at 8:30, they're like, how come you didn't answer me?
I was so stunned by it. I just thought like, I don't even, at that time, like, I don't even think I would be comfortable sending like a close friend a message.
Right. Unless you needed the ambulance at your house and they were the one who was going to get it for you.
Yeah, exactly. And I wasn't one of those people who kept their phone on vibrate at night at that time. So because I'm always thinking like, if someone is in an emergency, I want you to be able to get in contact with me.
Right.
But then I realized like some people do not have a sense of time.
No.
So now my business hours are from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. So if you happen to communicate with me, text, email, or smoke signal outside of that time,
Right.
I'll get back to you during the next set of business hours. However, I do try to be, very responsive. So even if they contact me outside of that, I'm normally pretty responsive unless I'm wrapped up in something else. But for the clients who make a habit out of it, who, if I send them an email on Tuesday, but they don't get back to me on Saturday, you're going to have to wait till Monday because my time is just as valuable as yours.
Right. So if you reach out with a question Tuesday, and they don't answer you till Saturday, you are not compelled in your mind to answer them on Saturday. You will wait till Monday.
Absolutely.
I like it. That's true. I love it. Okay. That's only fair. You took 4 days to answer. I'll answer you during the agreed upon time. So now you might not be the only designer I've ever interviewed that doesn't present their contract in person, but you're the only one I've interviewed that mentioned that they don't. And by contrast, many make a point to say to me that they present their contract in person. So What's the deal with that? Did you used to do it? You found that it wasn't necessary for you. You do enough other safeguards with the welcome and the FAQ and your conversation that it doesn't seem necessary. Tell me about that, Beth.
Because by the time I present the client with the contract, it's because we have already discussed the project scope. Um, and we have already confirmed, they already know what their design fee is going to be. So the contract is me saying, "Oh, we're going through with
We're
this."
official.
Like, yeah, we're official. This is just crossing the T's and dotting the I's. So I don't feel the need to go over it with them. And then 9 times out of 10 during the consult, I've already highlighted some of the areas that I think that they may find important that's in the contract. Like,
Okay.
I'll talk about the photography. I will talk about my process, like how I invoice, when I would collect the merchandise deposit, those types of things. So nothing should be a surprise. I
Okay.
do still get questions. Like, there's kind of like a quote unquote anti-harassment clause in my contract. And sometimes I have good questions about that, but just because they're like, why is that in there? And then I have to explain why that's in there. But then other than
And
that,
why
they're
is it in
fan-
there? I don't know. What is that about? I don't know if it's standard
so
operating procedure or not. I've never heard anybody mention that.
it's definitely not standard. After every client, I feel like I've learned a lesson, so I will update my contract. And I
Yes,
had a
smart.
situation where my contractor was feeling sexually harassed by a client.
Whoa.
Yeah, and because it was not a situation I ever expected,
Right.
um, wasn't someone that technically worked for me,
Right.
but it is someone I feel like you and all your subs should be respectful of the relationship.
Right.
So out of respect for this very tall, very buff man who's now very uncomfortable. It was a situation where I had to evaluate, there are things that are going to happen,
Yeah.
and I need to be able to protect myself as well as the team that I work with.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
I instituted, like, if there's no discrimination, there's no sexual harassment, there are none of this type of behavior should happen.
Right.
And if anyone does it, um, the contract can be terminated
We got trouble in River City.
immediately.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I'm
yeah,
going to tell you the honest to God truth. I mean, there might be people listening now, our friends listening are thinking, well, really? I'm okay. That happened to her one contractor. Does it happen a lot? I know with Window Works, it has happened many times over the
yeah,
years. And the thing about it is everybody receives it differently, right? So your particular contractor ended up being offended and uncomfortable. Right. So
yeah,
I guess I got crazy guys working for me. They come back. They're like, you're not going to believe what happened today. Right. And so there is no question. I have had it happen to me on an appointment where I was probably, my goodness, I don't think my youngest was born, so I was probably under 25 years old. And this guy comes into the showroom. I meet him in the showroom. I happened to be there when he walked in, like a walk-in. And right away, within 10 minutes, he's just, they're just talking at you and looking at you differently. You just know it as a
yeah,
woman. You can feel it. I guess as a man, you can too, of course, right? And, but I make the appointment to go to his house, because I have no fear. I probably should have had some fear at 24, 25 years old, but I did not. And I will, to this day, this is 30 plus years ago, I remember knocking on his door. I can picture the cul-de-sac that he lives on. I can picture his home. I rang the doorbell. He opened the door. He had no shirt on. He had his pants on, thankfully, and he's standing there holding a drink. And he says, "Can I get you a scotch?" And I'm like,
Oh, wow.
you have got to be kidding me. But you see what I did is, because I'm nuts, I went in and I sold that guy, and he paid a hefty fee for pissing me off. And so I came back with a pretty smoking sale, because you know what? I was not afraid or offended. Like I said, I probably should have been, but I wasn't. And I just was like, oh, you think you're working me? Guess what? I know who's working who now, Yeah. But, these things happen. The guys have had it happen. Women come into the door in a bathrobe and it, just slips open when they walk by you. Oh, sorry. It's crazy what people will do. It's absolutely crazy.
It is.
Yeah, they do. You do need to protect your team. That's smart of you, Beth. That's smart of you.
Yeah, I think there were two things that became the turning point. Is she started touching him.
Ugh.
And that was like,
that's gross.
There's one thing when, people, like
make
the
a look
robe
or
their
whatever.
shirt,
Yeah.
but now the act of physical touch means you're absolutely crossing the line.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to be rubbed up and down.
Ugh.
He doesn't want
People
you
are nuts.
calling and texting him with things that you both know that you have to be going through me about.
Right.
And then when that incident happened, and after I had a very long conversation with him, asking him, do you want me to say something to her? Like,
right.
I don't want to just jump in because that's my personality.
Right.
We talked about it, and he didn't want me to say anything to her.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, what the reality is, if he was a woman and a man would have been touching her,
yeah.
I knew that I would have been on the mountaintop screaming,
right.
sexual harassment, you can't do that. So
right.
I was like, I have to check myself and treat this the same way I would have treated
right.
the situation.
You can't just assume it's not a big deal because it's a woman to a man. It's still a big deal. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. I was
but he needed to stop it sooner. He needed to be the grown up there too. So and then I guess he must have, if he ultimately did not want you to step in.
He called me the day it happened.
Okay. Understood.
So yeah, it happened relatively quickly. But then we were thinking, okay, it kind of caught us both off guard.
Mm-hmm.
But when he went back the next day, he was like, she's married? And I was like, she's engaged. How do you know that? He was like, she's touching me again. Her fiance comes downstairs, and it's like a switch flipped. Like, he was like, I had no idea that anyone else lived there.
Whoa.
So he was like, a switch flip with this chick, and I was like, okay, that's a sign. One, if she's able to flip it on and off like that when the fiance appears, I was like, this could escalate.
Mm-hmm.
So he, unless it was emergent, he did not come on site. Right. It was either me or his team, and then I was like, after this wraps up, like, I have to add this.
I'm changing my contract. Exactly. Yeah, no, you do have to be careful. I mean, you don't know what you're going into. I mean, for, almost 4 decades, I've rang doorbells with strangers that the only thing we know is their name and their address from the telephone call,
Yes.
So you guys are having a little bit more conversation. Half the time, I'm not even the one having the conversation. So, but it's crazy. We've had it. The guys have had it. Like I said, I've had that situation. There's been others. But there are sensibilities that are unique to each of us, and something that I will sit there and be angry at and turn into my benefit could really rock somebody else and make them feel very frightened and scared, and with legitimate reason. I mean, the truth is, I was dumb. I did. The fact of the matter is I've looked back at my life and realized that when I immediately see blood in that moment, and I'm like, okay, buddy, let's play. You think you're playing me? Stop. Right. But the fact is I am actually the vulnerable one there. Like, if he actually wanted to take it to a level of anything, whether it was, violence or otherwise, what was I really going to do about it? Like, I should have turned around and walked out the door. My husband was like, you what? I'm like, but look at how much more over retail I got.
That is so, and you know what, that's exactly what it is. Because I think we're trying to rationalize it in our head, and it's like, oh, I don't want to freak out, but I watch a lot of crime shows and I listen to a lot of crime podcasts, and I was like, I approach it like everyone's a serial killer until I start.
Oh my God. Well, I have to tell you, I remember when Ted Bundy was a thing and he would make pretend that he needed a realtor to come to show him apartment. And it was always women. And I remember that very clearly. I don't know, remember what decade it was, but I remember my husband and I looking at each other going, he's like, you go into people's houses we don't know. And I'm like, I know, that's crazy. But then I just did it again the next day because I am nuts. So,
Oh
but
my God.
yeah, anyway, what are you going to do? So that's a nice, good learning lesson there. I love that, Beth. It is interesting that we do have had many designers over the last 3.5 years say how their contract evolves with every lesson they learn along the way, whether it's something along those lines or just along, lines of budgeting or presentation or, execution or reveal day, whatever it might be, that we are always learning and we're always consistently revising the way we do things based on the lessons that we've learned and the way that we want the outcomes to be, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I feel like you have to stay ahead of the ball.
Yeah, yeah, you definitely do. So, all right. So I would say let's do a few minutes about some of the you really have a nice body of press for you, Beth. You really do. You've been on the NBC open house program, which is very. I mean, is that national? I mean, I know it here because it's in New York. Is it national or is it a New York show?
There's actually two. So there's Open House NYC that covers more of the tri-state,
Hmm.
and then there's Open House that covers, I guess, like all other areas, more so I think West Coast.
Okay.
But they come on, for instance, Open House NYC doesn't um air
Okay.
on the West Coast, but I think they may swap segments, I think,
Okay.
um within each other, because when my episode first aired, people reached out like, I can't see it. It didn't come on. That's not what I saw.
Oh.
Um but then, about a year later, which is just over these last few months, they said, "Oh, I saw you. I live in California. It came on at like it comes on very late at night
Right, right, right,
there."
right, right, right,
Yeah.
right, 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 right. And so tell me a little bit about that's a show where they find you some way, somehow, and they invite you to be on the show. It's not a pay to play show. And the question is, what do you think, if you just want to share some suggestions or advice, it's never, hey, do this to attract Open House NYC, because it's not a direct line. It's more, what do you do in running your firm that you believe is the thing? What I always say enables you be prepared to get lucky, right? So you're doing something right and then it's noticed, as opposed to, if I do all this then maybe they'll call me. You see the difference, what I'm asking?
Yep, absolutely. For me, just in general, I don't pay for press. That's just not a part of my business model. That just may also be my finance and accounting background. That's like, no, but that's a variable expense and it's not necessary. Um, Most of my press, I believe, has come from relationships and networking. So if, for instance, if L Decor is looking for someone, then for an article, and they ask another designer, like, "Hey, I know you helped me with this article in the past. You know anyone who would be a good fit for that?" They may refer you for that. With Design on a Dime, I got referred by a designer who I've actually never even met before. She's in California. We are Instagram and Facebook friends. But that opportunity came through that. So everything has been relationships and networking. My biggest thing is like, always network from a place of giving. Don't expect people to do something for you, and don't expect that you're networking because you always want to receive, because it's disingenuous, and it's always going to come off like you're using people. So I'm just like, always network, build those relationships, stay active on your social, stay active in going to seminars and conferences, because eventually people are going to get to know your name and they're going to want to reach out. And I think in that sense, I've been really lucky, because I always try to refer people, give people resources, everything from sharing my contract freely, um, to like how I manage each client. I have very specific project workbooks that I utilize out of Excel before I even get it into my system.
Mm.
Those types of things. So I feel like the universe is just gonna be working in my favor. Like I'm always trying to give, so I'm able to receive back things, and one of those things has just been great press.
That's awesome. It is the foundation for everything. It
Yeah.
truly is the genuine interest in the other person as a human being, as opposed to what they can give you or provide for you. And in order to have that interest, it is important to you might start it online. You might start it on Instagram. You might start it in Facebook. But to your point, you got to go out in the world. You've got to go to the conferences. You've got to go to the markets. You've got to go to the talks at the showrooms so that it moves from the little square icon that sort of looks like you to a real live human being, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for the most part you can always kind of see like that pivot point of like where kind of things started. I don't know if you remember this, but Kravit used to do Blogfest. This is
Mm-mm.
probably this was oh my God, this might have been 2000 and this was 2011.
Wow.
Kravit did their first Blogfest. It was the brainchild of Beth,
Oh,
um, who's their, as you know, the head of marketing.
Beth Green, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Beth Green. And I went. It was the first week of May of 2011, and I went. I had just not too long, a couple years before, launched my business, and I was like, oh, well, this sounds interesting. Seems like there's gonna be a lot of people there. It's a few days. I was still at my corporate job, and I'll go. And one of the people that I met was the founder of the Black Interior Designers Network.
Mm.
She had just started her AA Top 20 list, which is the top African American interior designers.
Mm.
Um, and from that meeting, we became friends. A couple weeks later, my mother had actually passed away, and
Mm.
she reached out. She was just so sweet.
Mm.
So we built a relationship, and in her blog, in her kind of like recap of Blogfest, she had included me on her blog. And then for those next few years, if she like wanted to quote about something, she would reach out.
Wow.
But it was from like one of her blog posts that a production company found me for a pilot I did for HGTV.
Whoa.
A woman who was a writer for Ebony found me from one of her blog posts, and we did a couple things together. But from that relationship, she introduced me to other people, um, and I can track back so many relationships that blossomed because of that introduction,
Isn't
or
that
because
something?
of like from that blog post. So I'm very thankful for the relationships that I made, especially to her. I don't know if you know, but she died from cancer a
I,
couple years
I
ago.
do.
But
Yeah.
she left an impact for so many designers, including me, just trying to make sure that she shared everybody's work. So she always came from that place of giving.
Her name was Kim, wasn't it, Kimberly?
Yep, Kimberly Ward.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I remember that going around and the news of that. So sad. What a
Yeah.
powerhouse.
Yes. Oh my God, she was definitely a powerhouse.
Yes, yes, yes. And so it's so clear when you describe it that here Kravit has this blog fest. You're not even full time into your design firm yet, and you think, let me go, let me see what it's about, and then all these years later, so many opportunities coming through it, and starting with making a friendship with Kimberly, and then her writing about you, and then the TV production, and of course, I'm sure a lot of these other things, all you like you said, you can track back to getting out of your studio and going to the real live people and just giving and being friendly and being interested and taking part, right?
Yes, 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 yes. That is absolutely the nail on the head. Like there's so many gross, it's a really small world. Like you meet a person, then you're like, oh, I know that person. Then you meet another person. Oh, let's have dinner. Oh, I'm going to bring my other friend. And then you keep on meeting these people all back to like that one pivot point.
Well, I mean, to that point, don't I know you through Gail Davis because she brought you to a lunch and learn?
Gail, I definitely found out about you and Window Works through Gail Davis.
Right.
And it was pre Lunch and Learn. I was looking for custom window treatments for a project. And I asked her, because I always ask for a new resource. And she said, "Oh, I only use WindowWorks. This is their information. Blah 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 blah." And then
Awesome.
then I met Kimberly Seraphim,
Right.
and she's just such a nice and good human. So I was like,
Yes.
"Oh, well, this is my go-to."
Yes.
And then I found out more about WindowWorks, and then I was like, "Oh, I'll go." I was like, "Oh, I got the time. I'm going to go to this lunch and learn."
Right.
Those types of things.
Yeah, I mean, because I know Gail from the podcast. So in the first 6 months of the podcast, Gail was listening, and she was one of those early supporters that would actually speak to me on Instagram in the posts and say, I like this about this show. I like that about that show. And then one day she had a question about business. And because she had been somebody giving to me for 4, 5, 6 months, which was a simple sentence. You underestimate what a simple sentence on an Instagram post means to somebody, whether
Yes.
it's me posting an episode of the podcast or you posting a picture of a work that's completed or in process. That simple sentence. And when she had a question, I was like, hey, get me your cell phone number. Let me help you. Right. And
Yep.
let's have a conversation about it. And then we became friends. And then boom, like here we are. She was the one who suggested that we do lunch and learns at WindowWorks.
Oh,
I
wow.
want to meet some of these people in person that you have on the show. How can we do that? I'm like, well, let's have them in the showroom. Boom. You know what I mean? It's just, it's crazy. It is taking that risk. It's reaching out and giving a high five to somebody, but also for you. And here's the thing. I'm sure not only did all of that come from the relationship built with Kimberly Ward and all of the things that kind of like tumbled down the hill after that. But I'm sure the content of the Blog Fest was also beneficial to your business too, right? So we've got that as the icing on the cake.
It absolutely was. I remember coming back like with this long to-do list, like, Beth, you got to get your life together. You got to do all these things, blah, 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 blah. But it really I think the biggest thing is that it really introduced me to trade resources that I hadn't previously used. So whenever I think of fabric, and furnishings, I always think of Craft Now because they did Blog Fest for I think 3 years in a row. It was always a few days. There was nothing that we had to pay for unless you were coming in from out of town. But they made it such an amazing experience, and they put so much time and effort into it. They made me feel like, oh, they actually care about their customer. You now have a lifelong client
Relationship.
in
Yeah.
me.
Yep. Exactly right.
Yeah, and they're such a great team. That's where I first met Beth Green. So when I see her now, I'm like, hey, EVP of marketing. Because you get to become friends with people, and I've seen her like kind of like rise, and she's always so nice and sweet, and those things I always stick to because I like good humans, and those are the people that I just love to work with as long as they're doing great work.
Excellent. It's exactly right. Oh my goodness. I love it. It's so good. So many good lessons and nuggets that you shared with us today, Beth. It's amazing. It's a nice in-depth conversation. We went down a couple of rabbit holes there, but I feel like they were very helpful. And I really thank you so much for being willing to share your story with us here today, Beth.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was great. As a listener to your podcast, I'm super excited, even humbled to even be on your show.
I have to have smart ladies like you. You know that. Now, Now, before I share my thoughts on this conversation with Beth, I want to thank our sponsor, Article.com, and remind you that if you have not opened your trade account yet, you should. You know that Article.com is your source for quality furniture with sleek mid-century lines, and that their white glove delivery service right to your client's home can't be beat. Okay. I also want to say, have you seen the cover of my latest book, A Well-Designed Business to Power Talk Friday Experts? That is Article Sven Share on that cover. I'm calling it the Sven Share in #podcast green. I'm not quite sure what color they call it. I might have to ask them to change the color. What do you think? The name of the color, right? Anyway, this is an example of Article.com's furniture. And I have to say, as beautiful as that chair looks on the cover of my book, it was even more gorgeous in person. And it was such a breeze to have it delivered and, just brought right to us. And when it was time for it to go back to them, boom, it just went right in the box it came in. They picked it up. I mean, it couldn't have been easier, honest to God. All right. So sign up for your trade account today at welldesigned.article.com. That's welldesigned.article.com. All right. So the first thing I want to touch on in my conversation here with Beth was the conversation about budget. Beth's insights, particularly on when someone wants something, how they will almost always and, pretty usually find out a way to get it, right? So this goes to what I always say, and I said it in the conversation, don't save your clients money. And of course, to Beth's point in the conversation, we're not talking about when they can't afford groceries. We're talking about you being the professional and you being the expert, and up to you to show people good, better, best, because some people don't know the difference between good, better, and best. They don't know if they see good or they see better. They don't know they're not looking at best. And that's a real thing. And I think sometimes you forget that because you know it. You know the difference between good, better, and best. But us out here that don't do it for a living, we don't always know it. Okay. And I've told you more than a few times on the podcast, if I'm going to work with a professional and they don't show me the best of what's available and I end up going with good or better because I've thought I've gotten best, if I find out after the fact, I'm not happy. Okay, I'm not always going to select best, but I always want to know what the best is so that I make my own decision. And that's really the point of the conversation that Beth was expressing. Show them good, better, best. If they say they have $20,000 budget and that represents good, but they're looking at pictures of best and they're saying that's what they want, then very often that client will move to best. I know it firsthand. I do it on a regular basis myself, okay? So, and I also want to just say, I recorded this episode. I'm recording this intro outro in June, airing this podcast in June, but last spring I wrote an entire article on exactly this don't save your clients money and it's coming out the summer issue of Window Fashion Vision magazine. So it's probably out while we're talking now, okay? If you don't get this magazine, you really should, because there's lots of business articles like this in it from me and from other experts in the field. And it's just lots of the designers now are getting their work featured in the magazine. You might want to be one of them, just saying. Okay, so you can get your free subscription by going to this site, subnow, subnow.com/Luann, subnow.com/Luann. Okay, all right. So next thing I want to touch on, I cannot leave this conversation with you without talking about this sexual harassment topic. I really need you to understand that you cannot go by my cowboy nature and my approach that I took in the situation I shared. The situation I shared is all exactly true. It's exactly what happened. It ended up being completely fine. I'm here to tell the story, but it really could have gone very wrong. I was sometimes, really stupid. That's all I can tell you. When I was young, I was really that combination of young and competitive. And I have to say, I took his bold move as an affront to me, and I immediately processed how I was going to leverage it. so that I ultimately had the last word, even though it was a silent word. You know, my do I want to be right or get what I want? And so the thing is, though, that was a completely risky and foolish thing to do. And don't think the Vin man wasn't livid when he found out. Okay. But you know what? Like I said, I was a kid, and I'm competitive. And even then, can you imagine 30 years ago how much more intense I was, right? But I need you to know that it was foolish. And I want you to remember recently, Nate Berkus, remember he was on the show a couple of weeks ago, episode 433. He spoke exactly about this. He spoke exactly about when you feel something isn't right, particularly when you're in a vulnerable situation and position like this, that you should not ignore your voice and you must get yourself out of this situation. Okay, so are you hearing me? I really hope you are. Young Luann was very brazen, very bold, very fearless lady who very often did stupid things that bad things could have happened to me because of. Okay, so I'm really 100% need you to hear. No copying my behavior. Capiche? Okay. All right. Now, lastly, relationships. This part of the conversation, loved it. Building meaningful relationships that just maybe they do start out as awkward conversation at industry events, right? Sometimes that is what it is. You're like, and the next thing you know, there's a little spark, and then there's something common ground, and then boom, all of a sudden you're like, I like this person, right? But what do you have to do? You have to invest your time. You have to invest your money. You have to invest of yourself in these activities, okay? And you know me, I love it even more when you can build a personal connection and learn something at the same time that will make your business better. So yes, meeting and greeting for the sake of meeting and greeting, that's the message, valuable. But I always love that extra little and if we're here, we may as well figure out something else that's gonna make our business better, right? So what is it for you? Is it going to Las Vegas market? Is it going there and learning about new vendors and finding new resources for yourself? Is it joining the Power Talk Friday tour? Is it actually taking action on moving the needle in your business? Is it going to an event at like the Kravitz showroom, just like she discussed, okay? So what can you do to put yourself out there just a little bit? Something that you can pick up a skill or an idea to better your business while you're there, but also, more importantly, to make a connection with someone who you might never have met, or maybe somebody that you take from that IG or that Facebook friendship and you convert it to a real life meaningful friendship, okay? Because here's the thing. We all know that it's hard to be a designer. It's hard to navigate conversations about budget. It's, and we have all of the friends that say, oh, being a designer is just so cool. You get to look at pretty fabrics and pretty rugs and lamps all day long. And you just look at your friend and you're like, I love you so much, but I could punch you right now, right? Because it's not easy. It's scary owning a business, okay? And it isn't all the pretty stuff, okay? My friend Sandra Funk says every darn day you have to get up and you have to do it again, okay? The good, the bad, the ugly. So please find yourself some opportunities to make friends with people that know what you go through every day and can have your back when you have the lowest day ever and can give you the high five when the simplest, thing that goes right, that the rest of the world is like, what's the big deal? And you're like, oh my goodness, that's a huge deal. You have no idea. But a designer bestie will know exactly that, right? So please take those connections from Instagram and Facebook to real life. You'll be glad you did, I promise. All righty? Okay. Thank you for joining me today. My great thanks to Beth. I love her. I'm so glad that Gail Davis introduced us and got us connected. The New Jersey crew of designers at our Lunch and Learns is some kind of fabulous crew. If you're in the New York metro area, reach out to us at WindowWorks, info@windowworksnj.com, and get yourself on that list so that you can attend them with us. They're free. All righty. What are you going to do today? There's a lot of things. I packed a lot I packed a lot of stuff into this intro, outro today. There's so much opportunity for us now as business people. So I want you to be aware of it. Take what you need, leave what you don't, do something, take an action. Promise me that you will decide something today from this episode that you're going to do. Decide to be excellent. Will you do that for me? Decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at luannigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.